everybody? We got today coming at you. It's December 5th, 2024, coming into the end of annual enrollment. And we have a couple things on the agenda today. We wanted to talk about basically business planning and things that you can or should be doing right now this time of year to help grow your business very specifically next year. But before we get into that, the big news story of this week that's, pretty much been the big news story nationwide has been the essential assassination murder of the United Healthcare's CEO, Brian Thompson. So that's been...
Yeah, let's be honest. I don't like it when people soften the headlines or anything else. Let's call it what it is. I mean, it's really tragic and it's hard to even watch footage and things of it out there. Just horrendous what happened. It was just a terrible, brutal murder and assassination. So just for those asking, Dan's met him before. He is essentially our rep's boss's boss. So people that we work with and interface every day in the industry are definitely very much affected by this. It's kind of sending, shockwaves through the industry. But he'd been with United Healthcare for a lot of years, and he'd been in product design and other segments before he took over as CEO. And everybody who knew him, he went by BT. Everybody called him BT at United Healthcare. Again, really, really tragic. We weren't planning on talking about this on the podcast, to be honest with you, because just the sensitive nature of it. But, we also just feel like with what we're doing every week and trying to be kind of a platform or a place for the industry, it's kind of hard to just ignore it, So I think we ought to at least touch on it.
So first and foremost, thoughts and prayers and well wishes to his family and to everybody at United Healthcare, because it's definitely...
I mean, this came out of nowhere.
This is a chilling thing. And, for me, on a personal note, it's been a little bit shocking that, just some CEO that's essentially at the top of his game gets gunned down in New York City. I've been at that hotel. I've stayed at that hotel. I know...
Well, it's like one of the busiest streets in all of Manhattan, too.
Yeah, watching him get away on a city bike. I mean, the whole thing and the whole scenario is straight out of a movie, basically.
Look, we're not going to say a lot, of the things that maybe are unsaid that people are thinking, but the whole thing reeks, in my opinion. It's highly suspect, the entire thing.
I need my tinfoil hat for today, for sure.
I shouldn't, it's not anything, a laughing matter. One of the things too that I think you probably were going to talk about anyway, that I wanted to talk about, what I've been kind of really, I guess I should say, disheartened, disappointed, pissed off, and a little mixed emotions about has been the responses to people online, and just seeing comments of some people of being like, yeah, he deserved it, or he got what was coming to him, or yeah, all the dirty United Healthcare people making profit off of people's health.
My thoughts and prayers are denied, or,
Just, I can't believe society as a whole, and some of them who have just been keyboard warriors and just the negativity out there.
Well, it's been very dystopian. It's been very, like we described it, like Gotham City in the latest,
right?
The Joker or the Penguin type people out there, like literally celebrating and mocking this guy's death.
The memes
it's just absolutely disgusting, and it's weird about how prevalent it is. It almost is very shocking, and I think, considering we just had this big, large event, it almost feels like there's this pent up vitriol, anger towards this, wealthy, successful CEO. And, there's a lot of things that we could go, this isn't a crime investigatory podcast, nor are we going to talk about conspiracy theories, but it'll be very interesting to see, what comes out as the official story. And then you just really never know. There's a lot of...
I want to say stay tuned, everybody. This is a story that I will be watching very, very, very closely. Again, for, I guess, the purposes of what the intent of the podcast is, just of news,
of where we're trying to go. We don't want to turn this into a crime and investigation podcast, but I really think this is just like the surface, like the very beginnings of a lot of other things that will come out from this. I truly believe. Again, I kind of look as just like a very practical, pragmatic person and go, well, look, how is it that, I'm sorry, how do I say this without getting banned? That those first few days after January, when you had a lot of people on Capitol Hill who were tracked down and found, like every single person who was involved in that incident by the DOJ and rounded up, and and they essentially found every single person and prosecuted people. How is it that in Manhattan, like that, where there's cameras just everywhere on every block from all kinds of devices and, within the city, that you can't track that person and they're still at large? It's just...
well, there's that element. There's the element of some, by some means he looks like an absolute professional, and then other means like a noob, with as far as like an assassin. But there was, supposedly engravings on the bullet: defund, deny, depose. It just almost seems so far-fetched, so movie-esque, that you just wonder, and so my conspiracy side of me goes, who is this guy really doing this, or what's really going on, and why? And treading carefully, I will just say that over the next year, as we have a lot of transitions of leadership and of ideology, and a lot of, these new leaders, if they do a lot of the things that they say they're going to do in the way that they're going to do them, there is going to be a lot of disruption. And I would just caution everybody to not be too caught up in the emotion or the appearances of how certain things are one way or the other, because
or an immediate just headline grab.
Knee-jerk reaction. There's going to be, and I don't want to say psyops, but there's or black flags, but there's definitely going to be a lot of uncovering of things that I just, take a deep breath, and be discerning, and don't look at where your information's coming from, and don't get too stirred up one way or the other. Like, I think that's the other message that I want to have, is there's a lot of people that, focus on what you can control, focus on what's in you and your life. And that's been my biggest takeaway is, man, this guy, was very successful, had a family, and, it can just all be gone just like that.
Well, and I also would just say that, it's really unfortunate to say he was more, it appears to be more of a collateral damage. I really, from the people who were out there saying, oh, was somebody just upset because of the way United Healthcare handled a health claim or something, and they hired a hit? I would not even buy that for 1 second. This is one man's opinion, just mine. But again, the whole thing is just tragic. Anybody you would talk to didn't have a bad thing to say about BT. It was always how, even as a leader, he was humble, he was very accessible, he was funny, he was very charismatic, but he was very accessible. He was a man of the people, so to speak. And so just to kind of lose a person like that and a leader at such a big, not Fortune 500 company, but Fortune 3, Fortune 5, such a large, obviously CEO in a role like that, big void. And I just, again, tragic, really sad.
Yeah, and if you're one of these people out there that are celebrating, the demise of this man, and I've even seen online some agents and agencies, that's just despicable, and I think you're just a garbage human being if you are celebrating it like that. And just kind of to add on a little bit there, I think that you should be curious. I'm surprised at how many people are stirred up. And it's very apparent that there's a lot of people who feel this way about insurance companies, that they're the devil and things like that. And there's definitely a large segment of our population that feels like, healthcare is an entitlement. And a lot of people, we see it a lot on our side of the house, where people have this utopian ideal of what they expect healthcare to be like, where it's just this beautiful, perfect system where nobody gets sick, We have the access to the best doctors and the best technology, and it's all paid for by wishes and rainbows, and everything is always good all the time, and we just have, this affordable, great access to care, and that's just not a reality. That's not a reality anywhere in life.
And I can't remember, I'm going to butcher the quote, so I don't even want to, but, like Mark Twain, where he says, like the more that you travel, you know what I mean, the more that a man travels, like their world opinion, their viewpoint, everything changes. They become less, bigots, and they, are more accepting, and they understand. I would say that's the same thing about healthcare. And if you have traveled the world and you've been to other, whether it's, throughout parts of Europe, or whether you've been to South America or Africa or anywhere else, or India, you just know that, look, I'm not saying that we talk about, because it's our industry, we talk about the American healthcare system and how things are, broken, or things need to be fixed, and we all acknowledge that it needs to get better. And we can do better, and I think we are going to do better. But I'm just saying, when you comparatively, put the way an average American citizen in our American healthcare system is in comparison to other countries, which I've gotten service from the Red Cross in Mexico. Let me tell you,
I've gotten service, in Portugal. I lived in Portugal for 2 years, and I had access to their healthcare system, and I will not trade it. I will tell you that, even though it's single payer, I would not trade it at all.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you've traveled, you've been around the world, you've experienced healthcare in other countries.
Yeah, but Dan, some agent's going to bring up 1 or 2 small countries that have it better, or do it better, or have better technology, or more affordable services. And
they have a 10th or a 100th of the population that we do here.
Yep.
And it's all very different, but I'm just saying, it's just like everything's scalable. When you take in the scale and the scope of the American healthcare system and how we have it overall, let's work on improving it, but let's recognize it for what it is, that it isn't perfect, but we have it far better than most people.
Correct.
So to kind of be, anyways.
Yeah, that was just to wrap up my thoughts on it. The other thing was, with a lot of people complaining, now I am in no way, shape, or form saying that people are not denied surgeries, or their bills are not paid, or things like that, but you would think that the general consensus is that everybody in America is dying in the streets, unable to get any sort of care, and they're all because these evil overlords are just denying everything and squelching all the money out of the system. And I can say I have literally personally put thousands of people on United Healthcare and other carriers like that, and been involved, and I cannot think of one single person or direct instance from me or any of my 6 degrees of acquaintances where these people have literally sat by and, quote unquote, died in the gutter waiting for health care, or been unable to access care. In fact, I think the opposite is true, where people, whether they can afford it or not, somebody is ultimately paying for it and are getting this care. And so, again, we're gonna get a lot of comments about,
I know. I already got comments about,
they denied my mom's coverage or this, and
I got lit up for people with obese people about Ozempic drugs last time. So I already know. I'm already gonna get lit up.
And so in no way, shape, or form are we apologizing for any of the definite gaps in American healthcare system, and nobody has been more critical of that system than us, and wanting to, help be a part of that change and be good. And, but I would just caution you to not get too emotionally wrapped up in, these opinions, or, not let your humanity for somebody who's going through an incredible time of suffering because you feel emotional about one other sort of aspect of the industry.
Yep. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's a good segment to kind of move on to the next thing that we kind of really wanted to go into.
Positive, happy, good.
Yeah, we're gonna flip the switch. So I think that's enough said there. Unfortunately about that. And like I said, I'm gonna stay tuned, and I'm gonna be reading headlines every day. And for people who know me, I'll be following that very, 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 very closely over these coming weeks and months, and even year. So if there's updates there, we'll definitely be share them. But anyways, to all of our folks and our friends and contacts at United Healthcare too, just really sorry about that whole incident. Very tragic. Okay, what I really wanted to go through in this episode was really the process of doing year-end planning, mapping out like how your actual year went. Did you have a business plan? Did you follow that business plan? How well did you execute that business plan? And how do you go through the process of mapping out your next year? I think probably a good starting point is you think we should go through kind of the logic of how I approach like the business right now, Agent Boost, and granularly take that down? Probably.
Yeah, or we could start from an agent level and kind of work it on up, you know, because most people probably don't have a business.
Here's what I've observed. We talk about this a lot, and this is after, you know, being around for 17 years, talking to a lot of agents, and I mean thousands of agents. I'm still a little shocked at how many people don't actually have a plan. There is no plan. Mm-hmm. They don't really have anything tangible. They don't really have goals. You don't even know whether you're being successful or how you're performing if you don't even have anything written down. And I'm still really shocked. So I guess first things first, anybody listening, you definitely should have goals. Even if it's, let's just start at the very most minimal level. Let's say you're new to the industry, you're working a full-time job, and you're just getting an insurance license and you want to get into sales. That's great. Let's start there. That person, even that agent, should have some goals about, hey, I'm going to get my state license. I'm going to get appointed with insurance carriers. I'm going to make my first sale by this date. I'm going to try to get to 10 or 20 sales by this date. I'm going to try. You should put some very, very basic and achievable goals, but they need to be goals that are very like measurable, trackable.
Hey, hold on, you're stealing my whole thing. I got a whole, you know, so I do a whole presentation on this. If you can see this, we'll put up on the screen, but SMART goals, right? Jim Quick patented SMART goals, which are S is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, okay? And so as Dan's, let me just kind of interject there, your brain and process-wise does not know how to make things happen unless you have a very specific roadmap to make it happen.
Right.
And so
I'm going to jump into and say we joke about all the time. Insurance agents are like, get my license, make $1 million. $1 million, yeah. And it's like, as soon as I get my license, I'm just going to become a millionaire. And they're like, okay, where are the leads coming from? What are your processes? What about, you know, when we start going through.
It always reminds me of the South Park gnomes.
Yeah.
That steal the underwear. Maybe if you can find that clip, put it up right there.
You see, phase 1, collect underpants. Phase 2, phase 3, profit.
That's going to be really
make
random.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Specific.
Yeah, be very, very, very specific with how you do that.
Like I am going to write 100 Medicare Advantage apps during, you know, annual enrollment, and then I'm going to write 12 a month or whatever your goal is, okay? They have to be, the M is measurable, so you have to actually, it can't be some theoretical thing where you're like, I want to get better. You have to be able to quantify it either in sort of production or dollars, some sort of thing that you can look at. And you know, Dan and I, every day in the business, we look at our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and those are essentially our sales daily, an aggregate of what our entity is producing, everywhere from our field agents to our virtual teams and our W-2s to our LOAs and ACA and Medicare. And those are the things that we're watching every day because those are our measurables. Those are our vitals that we have to pay attention to.
And when I talk about agents too, just to give you here's some throwback to me being an agent in the field years and years ago. I had one manager at United Healthcare that I really didn't like, but nonetheless, he had a good tracking system. It was APSR, and I still remember it to this day, so credit to him. And it stood for appointments, presentations, sales, referrals. Those were the 4 things that, like when I did work a short stint at United Healthcare, I would have to report every week because you want to know, okay, how many appointments did you run? How many presentations did you give? And that is, you know, of course, if I went to a home and did an in-home presentation and it was a husband-wife, I presented to 2 people. If I did a community meeting, I call them enrollment meetings. But if I did a meeting and there were 9 people there, I presented to 9 people, right? So, you know, he was kind of trying to track how many at-bats did you have, you know? So it's like, again, I would track when I was an agent, appointments, presentations, sales, and referrals. And actually, at the end of every day, I would write this. This is going back to me being a missionary, all right? So everybody knows.
What were your numbers? How many?
I know I'm side questing here a little bit on this podcast, but I went on a mission for, you know, a Mormon church Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormon.
So no one
very correct
corrects
name,
you.
Years and years and years ago, and you would track, of course, how many charlas,
palestras, discussions.
Yeah, like
presentations, basically. Yeah,
sales pitches. Like how many presentations did you give in a particular day, and then you'd have like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. It was the same process for me in doing sales, where I would have my schedule for the day, Monday, Tuesday through Saturday, and at the end of every day, I would mark out, okay, APSR, all those numbers. And at the end of the week, I would evaluate and look at that and go, here's how many appointments I ran, presentation, sales, referrals. Those numbers all correlate. I'm just telling everybody here, it all goes back to agent activity. The more active you are, the more appointments you set, the more presentations that you're in front of, the more it all translates into sales. And I really would, at that point too, identify, how is it that I sold 9 this week and I only got like 1 referral? That's pretty weak. And actually looking at the numbers would help me identify in my process, okay, I need to be conscientious next time about actually embedding into my sales presentation and asking for more referrals. Because if I can get that number up to 30% of all of my closed sales and more referrals, that's just going to keep my sales funnel going more.
Yep.
Right?
With measurables, one thing I'll add on is know your numbers. And that's what Dan's talking about, his APSRs. I always went, we did our mission too, door knocks, blah, 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 blah. But then Dan and I did door-to-door sales for many years. I did door-to-door sales for 12 years as I was transitioning it for Comcast, the big overlord cable company. And it taught me a lot of things, and I knew my numbers, right? And that was one thing I tell my agents, know your numbers. And I knew that on average over my career from tracking it, that I would sell 1 out of every 7 people that I actually talked to at the door. Yep. And so when I was having a bad night, when I was having a rough patch of I'm 0 for 10, I'm 0 for 20, whatever, I would just know that statistically I was due, right? That I would be coming close to those sales, and then that I would have a couple, sequential sales right there, because those were my numbers. And when I ask all of our independent agents, especially the ones that are on the phones and our W-2s, what are your numbers? How many dials do you have to make? How many people do you have to talk to before you're actually performing an enrollment? How much time do you have to spend on the phone? How many leads do you have to dial? And then ultimately it translates to how much money, what are your numbers? What is your hourly time worth? Yep. And that's another thing that I think you agents all should know is if I say, how much is your time worth? How much, you should be able to tell me what your day is worth, what your week's worth, your day's worth, and your hourly time based on your historical performances.
Yep.
And
we have agents, I'll let you go back to that, who know when I take that week of vacation, there is the cost of the dollars of how much it spends for me to book my flight, hotels, XYZ, the trip, but the opportunity cost of what their time is worth, they know it's like, oh, dude, my week costs me, you know what I mean, $6,000 in lost expenses of just commissions I would have made that week too. So I got to compound that and add the $4,000 I'm outlaying in my trip plus the $6,000. My real cost of that vacation was $10,000, not $4,000.
Yeah, I mean when I had my old production business, I knew that my sales would drop by 10%. My revenue would drop for my company while I was gone, and so I had to factor that in. It's not just my cost and the cost of the trip and my time, but it's like overall revenue drop, it was compounded there. And you do need to get that granular. And even if you're, like a W-2 employee and you work for somebody with hourly plus commission, you should know it's not how much, whatever your hourly rate is, you should know factored with your average commission amount in what your time is worth. If it's, if you get paid $25 an hour, but with commission, you're able to earn $60, $70 an hour. When you have that in your mind, you're a lot less likely to sit there and be idle and scrolling and playing Clash of Clans on your phone during your workday or something like that, because your mind's sitting there saying, hey man, you probably shouldn't be spending, you wouldn't go spend $70 to play Clash of Clans, but yet you're actually doing that in a real measurable way. And so know your numbers, know what your end goal is.
And so I was just going to say, these numbers are all related to each other, right? And so when we kind of map out end goal for the year, there's a couple things. We want to set top line revenue goals which is what we do, like what we want to earn on the top line as a company. And then it's also, okay, a sales goal. Like what do we have to accomplish from a sales and performance perspective in order to get that number? And then you have like operational goals too about how much do you want in actual, profitability, from that top line and a profitable number. And so again, all these things are all related one to another. So from a practical perspective, if you are an agent and you were saying, hey, number one, I need to make, because frequently we talk to people, they're like, I need to make X amount of money, right? That's their one thing is it's like, okay, you need to make, let's just say $60,000. Well, then you need to be able to break that down and say, then how many sales is it going to take, and of what products is it going to take for you to make $60,000? Mm-hmm. Okay, so then you need to break it down from there into, okay, what activities do you have to do in order to get a sale? How many appointments do you have to run, or how many calls do you have to make, or how many leads do you have to purchase, or what? You need to start taking like the top line goal and getting very granular and figuring out the steps that are going to go into hitting the sales numbers that are going to eventually give you the revenue that you're looking for.
Correct. And what Dan said is, all those numbers are related, and it really doesn't matter what industry you're in. I have a lot of friends that are in solar and pest and door-to-door and cable and all. It all tracks back to they're all interrelated. They can go, well, how many contacts did we make, or how many sets, or how many appointments did we run? That's going to translate to an average close amount. It's going to translate to an average revenue amount. That's going to translate to an average profit amount. So you need to know these numbers so you can track what's important and focus on those income generating activities, right? And that's the biggest thing with having measurable goals is you got to be able to hold yourself accountable. So if you're a new agent and you're like, oh, I didn't perform any enrollments. Okay. How many visits did you go do today? How many senior homes did you go stop by? How many leads did you call?
Did you go talk to any CPAs?
Yeah. What were your income generating activities? Right. You can trace those things on up and down the line from start to finish, from prospecting all the way through closing. And you should be tracking as much of that as applicable to drive your behavior, okay?
Yeah, and there's plenty of agents who are like, well, I'm working, but it's going back to, yeah, but what are you doing? Like, going back to income generating activities, there's a lot of agents that you talk to, or agencies who they don't really have purpose. They wake up every day, they fumble around, they do some things, they attend a random Zoom from a local carrier. They go meet up with a comfortable contact that they've already established in the industry and go grab lunch or go grab coffee or something. And they're like, before you know it, they've spent 4 hours of the day, and they've not really done anything that's going to make them money.
This is a great point. Yeah, one of my favorite books is called The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy. Yeah, and in that, he talks about, what is your rain-making activity, right? In other words, what is it that makes it rain? What is it that brings the income, dollar bills into your bank account? Identify what that is and focus on that. And he talks about this activity that he did when he was starting out as a realtor, building his team. And every time, like, he boiled it down to whenever he was pitching somebody for a listing, that's what his income generating. Everything else was fluff. Everything else was just, day-to-day stuff. And he kept a stopwatch. And whenever he would be actually doing that work, he would start the stopwatch and then stop it. And he talked about his first day, he was only able to clock like 6 minutes. And he thought he was, absolutely crushing it. But he started focusing more on doing that and eliminating all these other things. And what Dan said is a thing that a lot of agents really struggle with is self-awareness, and they will fill their days with non-income generating activities, like he's saying.
Or they're not intentional with how they're spending their time.
Correct. Yeah. They'll sit on a Zoom. Oh, Agent Boost has a Zoom on something I don't really need to know about. I'll go pop in on that. Oh, I'll go drive across town and attend the carrier training, so I can eat some brownies, so I can feel good about, what I'm doing. And it just reminds me of like the old retired guy whose wife wants to get him out of the house so he can, feel like he's doing something productive, but he's just doing stuff to fill his time, right? Right. And same book, he also gives an example of when he would go over to Walmart or Nordstrom and shop for fancy clothes that he was going to buy one day. And finally the security guard stopped him and said, hey, don't you have something better? They thought he was casing the place because he would show up every day there and shop. And he said, don't you have something better to do? And that was like his come to Jesus moment where he was like, yeah, I do have something better to do. I should be doing income generating activities. And so I tell a lot of my agents all the time, stop hanging out or hiding out at Nordstrom. You know, in your mind, you're doing all of these things other than doing the actual work that leads you to the money.
Yep. So you should be asking yourself, are the activities and the things that I'm spending my time on, are they getting me closer to a sales transaction, or are they not?
Correct.
And then to give you more of an idea too, and maybe we can have some handouts or links or references on this episode, I've done a lot of business planning sessions with agents and agencies, and I actually break it down to 3 things, like the categories I break it down to. I break it down into immediate opportunities, short-term opportunities, and long-term opportunities. And I train and teach agents that they should allocate time into each category, but they can't over-index anywhere. Because what will happen, I would say, immediate opportunities are things that you can sell right now, put money in your pocket right now, today, or within the next 2 weeks, right? And then you have short-term opportunities, which are things that you're investing time, effort, energy into right now that will convert in that calendar year. So think about activities that you're doing in the local marketplace, in preparation for like AEP, or like you're talking to people turning 65 that aren't quite, at that age yet where you can write an app. Or, it's a no for right now, but they agreed to do a review with their Medicare coverage come annual enrollment period, right? So there's like that funnel, that part of your sales funnel that will convert within a year. And then there's those long-term opportunities where you're building relationships. Maybe it's a ship counselor that's going to send you business. Maybe it's this retirement community that, you've brought them bagels for, 3 months and sponsored their activities. And at some point, it's going to convert into these evergreen leads that'll be sent to you. Those are long-term opportunities. They're great, but if you're an agent and you're spending too much time in any of those categories, then you're not building like a very well-defined, robust, business plan.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, the analogy I've always used is you have agents, and I relate it to fishing, right? Some of these agents, they're just catching little easy ones, and they're not getting enough meat. They're not feeding the family. They're not able to sell it. And then you have this middle tier where they're kind of, they're out consistently catching things. And then you have the whale hunting, right? The third category. And I meet a lot of the whales are the big deals, the big long-term stuff that doesn't always pan out. But if it does, it's great.
The pipe dream.
Yep. And you meet a lot of agents, and all they are is whale hunting, right? They've never learned the skills. They're not able to feed the family. They're not able to, build a business. They're all out, trying to score these pie in the sky deals that are going to come to fruition one day, and they're never making the money, and they never can set themselves up to make it through that first part of the business.
Well, and practicality too, I really mean this, and I don't want to offend anybody out there. I don't chase your dreams. Go do it. Go. You are typically the only person that's holding yourself back from greatness and from success, typically. People think that other people have these opinions of them. That's like self-talk for a lot of people. And so I'm telling you, go chase those. But what I've observed is that when you're in front of those decision makers for those big pie-in-the-sky transactions anyway, they're pretty astute people, typically, who are making those decisions. And if you're an agent who doesn't have a lot of experience in the business, you're just doing that whale hunting, that person's probably pretty perceptive, and they know that you're not a highly successful agent at that point anyway. You're far better off, like we're talking about, and becoming a good agent, starting to write business, becoming knowledgeable, writing 20 apps, writing 50, writing a couple hundred apps. And, as you develop in the industry, you become much more sophisticated, knowledgeable, astute, and you're able to pitch and present opportunities, those pie-in-the-sky deals, much more effectively when you're at that level.
Yeah, because you've earned it. You've earned that experience. Yep. I like, kind of just continuing on the SMART goals. The A is for achievable to that point, and there's definitely achievable goals at different times in your career. But, there'll be new agents who are getting in the business, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to write 1,000 apps my first year. And I'm like, okay, you might be, the great white unicorn out there that's, really going to knock it out of the park and be an outlier, but that's generally not, realistic.
Right.
And maybe you should start on like, let's make sure your bills are covered, right? Let's set a goal for you to have, and then we can adjust those goals going forward, but make sure they're achievable, because if they're not, we see this all the time, even let's say, call it out with our sales incentive, right? We are currently running a trip incentive for a lot of our LOA and W-2 employees. And one thing that happens is we roll this trip out and we see a spike in all the, the revenue and all the sales activity and the sales, because people are hungry, they're ambitious, they're motivated, they want to hit that. And very quickly you find people that are like, oh, that's not achievable for me. They think that, so they take themselves out of it.
Some people give up in 3 days. Some people it's 3 weeks. Some people it's 2 months.
But it's always fascinating for me to watch which ones, some of those people don't even put themselves in a category to be influenced or motivated by that, because in their mind it's not achievable for them, And
well, and then the reality is it's absolutely achievable, because we've metriced it all out, and it absolutely is. And of course, we made it difficult to where you do have to be a top performer, and you do have to put in extra work, and it is by design made to be difficult so that you do have to stretch and reach and achieve. And that's what makes things like that more valuable. It's more worthwhile. It feels like an accomplishment because it's hard. And so it feels that much better.
Correct. Well, and for those who have done it, like our trips, they're awesome. They are really, really awesome. And they're some of my favorite trips I've ever done in my whole life. This one, we're going to Maui again. And the people that make those, they want to be there because they want to earn that, and they want that feeling of achievement and that recognition just as much as the actual trip itself and the revenue, right? So
true.
You should take an inward look if you're not somebody that's motivated by things like that, and kind of figure out, why. There's different things that motivate people for different reasons, and maybe it's recognition, maybe it's the money, maybe it's the experience. But if you can't link those things to anything you're doing, you're probably translates over into your whole entire life if you're not motivated by things like that.
Agreed. So as you're listening to this episode, I'm hoping that you're doing some self-reflection. If you're an agent, you're thinking about this year of 2024 of, did you set any of this in place? Did you reflect upon your business? Did you map it out this year? It's okay if you didn't. Now's a great moment for you to start thinking ahead of next year and thinking about where you want to be. And I always, again, recommend a revenue goal for yourself. I also recommend, from that revenue goal, a sales goal or a target of what you're going to sell. And then you should have your other goals that go along with that. Again, so, a goal, so you should obviously set like a daily amount of calls that is your goal. If you're an agent who's selling on the phone, or if you're a field agent, you need to have actually goals that you set for how many contacts you make in the local market. Or if you're doing events, you need to set a goal for how many health fairs you're doing. Or if you're in retail, how many days or hours are you going to be in different booths that you're at. So you need to start creating those goals and mapping out those, having them in writing, and then being able to every 2 weeks or once a month be able to look at those goals and say, am I doing all the activities and the things that I need to do to ultimately get me to this bigger macro goal of what I set for myself? And if you're not doing it, that's all right. Then you need to put your foot on the gas. You need to make up for lost time. You need to work the extra hours. You need to do whatever you need to catch up, but don't get behind and just throw in the towel and give up on things because it's January and you're only a month into the year and you're behind on your goals.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why we like to do this time of the year too, and kind of reevaluate where you're at. The last two will be real quick. Is on the SMART is realistic, which is, similar to achievable, but make sure that you're able, they're in realm of what you can do in in this time. And
if you made $30,000 last year as an agent, that's fine. Don't set the goal that you're going to make $600,000 the next year.
Unless you have a great plan to get there. The time, and the T is timely, and I think that's very, very important, that you have to have a timetable set with it. So one, how you can measure it, but then also that you can hold yourself accountable to it, because that's the other thing that I really like about why we're doing this episode this time of year. I personally hate New Year's resolutions and
Same.
Resolutionists. I've always just used the end of the year, and conveniently my birthday's December 28th. So I get the double, right? I get 1 year older and the calendar year older at the same time. So I've always felt this very...
You live in the shadow of baby Jesus.
Yeah, this very bookend feeling of the year of that was a chapter, what's on to the next, you know? And so this, Dan and I, and maybe you'll go into it, but we've already identified, kind of wrapped up our this year's where we achieved and where we're headed towards next year. And it's not too soon or too late or too early to do that. In fact, everybody I know that's great at living an intentional life and goal setting does that right now. They don't wait until, you know, January 1st and they're like, what are my resolutions that I feel social pressure to write out, you know? Yeah.
And the other thing I would say too, beyond those, I am 100% in agreement with you. I don't like, you know, we always joke, we use a lot of, if you know us or you listen to the podcast, you've probably gotten a little bit of a taste for our personalities. We use a lot of slang and a lot of, you know, quotes and everything else, but we always joke and say that, you know, a leopard doesn't change its spots, you know, or a tiger doesn't change its stripes, you know, or whatever. But, you know,
our dad loved those colloquialisms.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's true. So I just don't think it's very realistic for people to wake up with a New Year's resolution and be like, I've been on this end of the spectrum and tomorrow I'm going to be this. It just doesn't work that way. So you got to like take your baby steps. And I actually, same thing. If anybody's ever seen that movie, What About Bob? I joke about this all the time. Dr. Marv. Dr. Marvin! Dr. Leo Marvin! Doctor! Where the author, what was that actor's name? The therapist that Bill Murray like sees.
Oh,
I forget his name.
The gray-haired guy.
Yes, but he writes the book. He calls it Baby Steps.
Yeah.
Baby step this, baby step that. It's all like that, and that's what I teach agents is like, don't make this giant goal that's like this. You got to break it down into something that's very granular and just focus on your steps that you have to achieve on this little goal, then do the next one, and then do the next one. If you look at the overall huge overarching goal, it's going to become very overwhelming, and you're not going to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there to add on to. Your brain has something called the reticular activated system or something like that, where it's basically like if you decide you're going to get a car, you know, you want to buy the Cybertruck, let's say. It's a different one.
Who wants to buy that thing?
Me. I did want to buy it. So let's say you're going to buy a white Mercedes, right? Whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you start noticing or seeing these white Mercedes all over the road. It's because your brain is keying into those things. And so what Dan's saying, when you do these baby steps and when you have a clear plan, your brain is more keyed in on those things. There are actual neurological reasons that will help you achieve your goals when you have these things clearly set out and written down.
It's also that positive reinforcement. Like when you hit that milestone or that achievement, you can do the next and you can do the next.
Correct. Yeah. And I remember during COVID when we were building the virtual team and at night, I would basically visualize what specific steps we needed to do to actually build out this system, right? We had this goal in mind, and then it was kind of like, you know, you lay the foundation and then what's next? You got to put these things, okay, we got to buy the computers. We got to get a space. We got to find this. We got to do these things. And it was building the plan in your mind. And we were able to do that because we had a very clear goal and a clear path of what we wanted to do. You know, kind of a...
Did you use the waterfall methodology?
Probably. What is that?
No, in project management, Scrum Masters.
Yeah. I mean, oh yeah. Well, our tech teams tried to do that before.
Yep.
So yeah, that's definitely the other kind of along those lines though, guys. And this is something that I think maybe you all should start with that I don't think enough people do in the beginning is they never really stop to ask themselves, you know, what's my end goal? What am I actually trying to achieve? Because we deal with this with agents all the time where they're like, I kind of think I want an agency now, or I want to recruit some people. It's like, well, do you really want an agency? Do you really want to like go recruit people and teach, train, and develop them? Or do you want to just refer people over and make some extra money?
Frequently people decide they want to start an agency because they want to make more income. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. And you're like, do you love teaching people and helping them and taking them to appointments and holding their hand and helping them with training and helping them understand like these concepts of Medicare and training them. And do you get, you know, essentially gratification and enjoy helping other people and see them succeed? If the answer is no, look, a lot of salespeople are very selfish, and that's not a bad thing. That's just realistic. And they're like, no, I'm too focused on me and my sales and everything else. I'll just recruit a body, throw them against the wall, see if it sticks. I'm too busy writing my own business. And they're great salespeople are frequently terrible managers, you know?
Correct. So, and there's no two ways to do it. We have solo.
Well, and the reality is, if their goal is actually just to make more money, they could do it just changing and tweaking some of their own sales practices, or scale their business in other ways and achieve much more income without having to be a manager and do things that they actually don't want to or enjoy.
Yeah, we have many solo producing agents who probably take in more revenue and more net revenue than a lot of agency owners, because they've just done it a little bit differently, you know? And so that's one thing that, as you're going into your goal planning, like, what are your objectives, right? And the other thing this time of year that we really start focusing on, if as you agents, as we're talking to you, are you in a current situation where you're able to make these things happen, right? And this is where I'll give us the shameless plug for, you know, recruiting. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're in an ecosystem where you don't have the support or the structure that you need to be successful.
Or that your goals aren't in alignment and are not even achievable with where you're at.
Correct.
Yeah. And before we keep going down that path, Mike, because I think I know where you're going. I know how your brain works too, like mine. I don't want to forget to add in there, along with the goals we've talked about from revenue and sales and everything else, you should have some other peripheral goals too. Like, I had 17 different goals for the company beyond just every division. So when I did our goal setting for next year and planning and mapping it out, we had a goal for our Medicare division. We had one for our ACA division. We had one for ancillary products. We had one for life and annuity. And then there's other ones as far as like brand awareness, marketing, very granular things that I wanted to accomplish. And some of these things weren't revenue based. There were other motives or reasons behind it. Going back to like that why and that purpose, you should probably have some other goals too. And maybe it's like, you want to earn this money because you want to give money to this nonprofit. You want to, your why is some reason like, hey, you love what you do because, you know, your grandma died and got terrible advice and didn't get treatment, you know, going back to where there's some reason or purpose that people have. And you should also have some personal achievement goals, you know, beyond just the money and the sales. And the last thing, not to get too, you know, like emotional or fluff in this episode, is I really do feel too, and this is just like this universal concept that I tell all agents and agency owners, just do the right thing. Meaning, like, you can be a salesperson who has this really goal and you're chomping at the bit, you're a highly aggressive salesperson, and you want to set a goal of 400, 500 apps for the year. Awesome. But what I am telling you all is, in the long run, in life, in your business, you're going to be far better off always doing the right thing, and you will get the business back in, you know, tenfold if you just will do the right thing. So if you're in that sales encounter, you're in that presentation, you're talking to a person that you could sell this plan, you could persuade this person to buy this product. It's not the right fit, but you want to get your commission because you want to get your sale. Don't do it. I really promise you that it's better to fall slightly short of your goal in that moment for that day or that week or that month, and you will make it up the next month. You will make it up the month after that. You will make it up the next year. I really mean that as like this universal concept. Just have that, I guess, that decision-making ability when you're in the moment. So anyways.
Yeah. I like that. Just to kind of add on, you know, what I do personally, and if anybody's interested, I did a whole keynote at our rollout last year on this, but I do vision boarding as well as my goals, and I kind of talk about my whole personal system, and we'll put a link. I think it's already in our channel somewhere if anybody wants to watch that at some point, but I tie my vision board and all my whys to what we're doing, and then that kind of acts as the fuel, you know, for the goals and things like that. And I really liked what you said. You know, if you always do the right thing, ultimately, you know, things will work out for you. And I really feel like we've been the benefactor of a lot of that. want to kind of move on about like growing and building. One of the things where I was kind of going and see if this is where you thought I was going was I'm amazed at how many agents and agencies will just stay stuck and stay stagnant and complacent with their current situation.
They're stuck in third gear
because they don't want to either go through a little bit of pain of, let's say, moving contracts, or, you know, not take or cut back on some funds or reinvest some money.
Or I don't want to upset that person that I might see at the grocery store or at church, or, you know, or whatever, you know?
Yeah. I mean, and they don't want to treat it like a business, right? And what happens is we keep receipts. We're talking vaguely, but we're also talking specifically about agents and entities that we've seen. And I'll tell you, you have not grown. You're not growing. If you're stagnant now and you don't find a path out and you don't know what to do and how to grow, you're probably going to be in that same exact situation, you know, next year and things after. And if you want radical change, it requires radical change. Yep. If you want to change your situation, then you have to identify what it is, and you're probably going to have to go through a little bit of pain in order to hit that next level. And so I mean, I could make a list as long as my arm of people off the top of my head of agents and agencies that have kind of kicked the tires and not moved and not done this and hemmed and hawed about it. And they are in the exact same situation or worse than they've always been, and they've just stagnated.
Well, not only that, like, look, people haven't been innovative and they've not tried new things, and they've not really, you know, when we talk about goal setting too, there's endeavors that we've done over the years that, look, we when you're a business owner, like, you don't know how to do everything. And part of that is that trial and error. Some of it is, hey, like you have a lead vendor and you want to grow, and your goal is this, and I need to grow my sales, and I need to grow my revenue, and I need to do this. Well, I need to try out this new lead vendor. Well, we would go through the pain in the process of trying 10 different lead vendors and be like, hey, is this lead vendor compliant? Number one, is this lead vendor, how quickly and timely do they get us leads? What's the conversion rate? What's the cost? We have to go through all that trial and error to figure out, okay, we tried these 10, these 2 we're keeping, these 8 we're not. Let's keep moving on. And you do have to burn through capital and trial and experience to do that. And, you know, that's just one example. But we have a lot of agents and agency owners out there in the industry who are not willing to take that risk or that time to look. It's never going to change unless you're willing to go through that risk. You know? So
yeah, they're just waiting on the sideline for some external circumstance to change their circumstance. You know, like
I actually did a post like on LinkedIn not too long ago. It was sometime this year on that Dr. Seuss book. You know, all the places you'll go.
Yeah,
I have it memorized because I used to read it to my kids all the time when they were little. You know, there's a page in there called like the waiting place. You know what I mean? It talks about people who are just waiting for the fish to bite, waiting for the wind to fly a kite, they're just waiting. You know, and I just think that there's so many people out there who just know, but I don't know what they're waiting for. You know, the bus isn't going to come. Things aren't going to change. No one's going to save you. It's really up to you to get off of your butt, to make your plan, and then go execute. You know, you got to have the strategy, and then you got to go be tactical and go make it happen.
Yeah, all those agents and agencies in the waiting place. You know, if we were to write that Dr. Seuss book, it'd be, you know, waiting for their upline to do something for them, waiting for their owner. Yeah, waiting for the phone to ring. And I would just say, if this year they weren't progressing, it's probably unlikely that that's going to change in the very near future, right? For us, our mentality is you're either growing or you're dying, right? Like stagnation is as bad as a decline for us. And we always want to be looking for how can we grow? How can we be more efficient? How can we be more effective? And I really think that, you know, there's only a handful of entities in the entire country of our size and scope that have that mentality and are operating like that. Truly, you know, without getting specific, there are a lot of entities that have a lot of stagnation, and there's a lot of leadership that is, their best days are behind them. They're not principally involved. They're not there every day. And I think all the time about, you know, one of our best friends from high school who started working with us, and he's like, I'm amazed at how you guys are actually here working. And I'm like, well, what else would we, what else would we be doing? He's like, oh,
Like
riding the boat, or like,
I'm like, I practically got a cot in my office that I sleep in practically.
Yeah. It's like, no,
I mean?
we're here, we're involved, and we're growing, and we want to help those agents and agencies grow.
Well, and I think that goes back to it though, is it's like, again, what's your why and do you love it? And I can honestly say that we both love it. Like, I'm passionate about it. I like what I do. I enjoy what I do. I feel like I'm good at it. And when people find something that they're good at, they're going to lean into it. And that's what we've done. And so I think that matters too. And if you're listening to this, you should be as passionate and as excited about being an agent and helping your clients and doing X and Y and Z. And it's like, if you don't, like, what are you doing? Like,
this business is hard. Like, get out.
Yeah.
Go do
like
something else.
If you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't have that fire, that passion. I don't love doing this. There's a lot of ways to make money. I've told a lot of people, like, this isn't for everybody. So maybe you go find another career path, So I would, just add that in there too. And going back to, before we kind of come up on time, really for this episode. So again, a couple of things I want to recap before we just to kind of bring it home a little bit. Everybody's at a different level. Some people are, very new, and their goals are going to be sell their first plan, sell their first 50 plans, whatever. Some people who are very sophisticated and who have been around for a long time, your goals maybe are going to look something next year like, hey, I'm going to add staff actually. Like, I'm going to have my first hire, and I'm going to have, or my second or my third hire. I'm going to bring on an employee or an assistant or something like that. You should really scope that out and start looking at that as an investment rather than an expense. Very different viewpoint. I've had to teach a lot of agents this concept of, when you're growing and scaling your business, stop looking at the money you're paying that person. If you find and screen the right people, you're effective, you have good processes, that person, maybe the first year you're, net, maybe they cost you a little bit of money that first year, but what about the second, the third year? You need to look at that staff member as an investment, not an expense. Maybe you're an established agent, you're already writing hundreds of apps a year, you're very well off. Maybe your goal should be that if you're selling ACA plans, you're going to start selling Medicare as well and cross-selling. Maybe you're going to start offering ancillary products and clean up your sales process and your portfolio. And your goal is that you're now going to sell 50 ancillary plans. Maybe your goal is, hey, you're going to work on your retention, because you found that you lost 15 to 20% of your clients and went, wait a minute, I've got to be better there. Maybe that's your goal that you're putting in place, that you ultimately, if you increase your retention by 5 or 10%, and you're still keeping up with your same sales trend, you're going to have a ton of growth, right? Mm-hmm. So just be conscientious of what your really goals are. Everybody's in a different place, different size of business. But I would encourage everybody to be extremely intentional about what you're doing with your time. Build it out, write it down, build your own slide deck, do your own SWOT analysis, have everything written down somewhere that you're going to be able to review and visit every single month.
Yeah, for me personally, like with all this system I follow, I have 5 one-year goals and 5 big 5-year goals that I'm working on. And those are my focus. We do it a little bit differently with the business because we have a lot of divisions and initiatives and things like that. But I will always evaluate those things. And so one thing I would encourage you all is, it doesn't matter if you're listening to this now in December of 2024 or 2 years from now in July, make sure that you have clear written down goals, that you know what your objectives are, that they're smart, that you are constantly evaluating them. I have my goals up on my tab of my computer. They're on my phone. They're on my vision board. They're always there. I always know where my goals are and where they're at. And I have the same thing. We have our business goals on a document, a shared document that we go over and that we look at and review. And I promise if you do it like that, you'll be amazed at how much you can get done in a year.
And just so everybody knows, we share our company goals with our staff members. We just had a meeting about it, 2 weeks ago. And then we try to break that down very granularly and saying, hey, as an organization, for us to meet our goal, this is what we need you very specifically to contribute to. And this is what we very specifically need you to achieve. And if you don't, we're not going to get our company goal. So here's what it is. And we're very clear that way. So if you're an agency owner, that's how you should be doing it too, is getting buy-in from everybody in your organization, making sure everybody knows what that goal is and that they have that onus and that responsibility to kind of do their part, right? So that's another very important thing that, to be sharing with you all. And some practicality just as we wrap, since it is December, whatever. I think I mentioned this on my last episode or two ago. Everybody needs a little bit of time off, but let's be honest. In this industry, it's hard. It's mentally hard and taxing, and it's a long Medicare annual enrollment season. But we're not working in the coal mines in West Virginia. You know what I mean? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Kind of like when Charles Barkley was making fun of the NBA players with load management.
Yeah.
He's like, come on. Y'all are not working in factories. You're playing basketball.
2 hours a day.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, look, it's hard work, but there's people out there working a lot harder than us. So take your time, but don't take off the whole rest of December and then half of January. From a very practical perspective, take your couple of days, enjoy your holiday, your time with family, loved ones, write down your goal, have it ready, and then when it's January, hit the ground running. Be January 2nd, going to work, hitting the phones, hitting your local market. It's my biggest pet peeve in the entire industry that I can't get anybody on the damn phone and I can't get carriers or other people working until the 15th, the 19th, the 23rd of January, and you have missed 10% of the entire sales year. And if you're in the biz,
almost a third of OEP.
Yeah, it's OEP, or if you're in ACA sales, you got till it's busy. They extend OE. So I can never figure out why all that very valuable time gets wasted. So please use the December to wrap up, meet with your tax planner, do your miscellaneous things, clean up your books, do all the things that, in your downtime, organize your office, do all those things that are not income generating during that slower period of the year so that when you're back to January, income generating activities.
Yep. And my final thought would be, if you're one of these agents or agencies out there that doesn't know how to build your plan or next steps, reach out to us. We'd love to work with you. We'd love to help you. That's literally our purpose of our existence, is to be your partners and help you execute on your game plan. So whether that's myself or Dan, we're still very involved in, executing business plans at a high level with our agency partners and
strategy,
critical agents.
Tactical.
Correct.
Yep.
And then we have a lot of, our agent support managers and team leads and stuff that we will help them. We'll plug you in to the resources and connections that you need. And just another little nugget there before we wrap, we are going to be announcing and talking a lot about our elite agent trainings, a little hook here, where we will do them for 2 days here in our Salt Lake headquarters or our Tampa headquarters. 2 days deep dive training into what tactical things agents are doing in 2025 to be successful. And our agents that come to those, 80% to 90% of them end up being what we call top producers. So not just producing agents, but highly producing agents. And the best thing is those are free. You, if you're already contracted with us and you've written a handful of business, we'll pay for you to come out. And if you want to just come out on your own dime, whether you're with us or not, you can come out and you don't have to align with us or not. But you'll probably like that training. And we're going to be talking a lot about those as we go into next year.
Yep. All right. Sounds great. It's a wrap for today. Catch y'all next week.
Agent.